Hello, Internet, and welcome to the Spin Session Podcast. I'm With, and I'll be your host. For those new to me and my content, I'm a Marvel Rivals streamer over on Twitch and YouTube, and I upload videos to TikTok and YouTube whenever I can. Either LGBTQ+ or neurodivergent to some degree, myself included as I'm bi and autistic. So this podcast was created to give individuals like myself a chance to talk about themselves, their experiences, or their special interests, or SPIN for short. For today's episode, I'm joined by another one of my amazing mods on Discord, Twitch, and YouTube, Kate. Do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself, what kind of characters you play, and what flavor of autism you brought with us today?
Hello, my name is Cake. I go by Cake, or I guess server admin Rocket. Name's kind of self-explanatory. I play a lot of Rocket, like a lot of Rocket. Kind of falling out of Rocket though, and playing a lot more tank recently. Ironically, I found your content at the exact moment that I started tanking, so it really gradually was just the stepping stone into your content. I've played at all sorts of levels in Rivals, but never really played anything beyond that. Outside of Rivals, I do a lot of construction site safety, a lot of first aid. I do have a degree in video production with a video editing focus. Never touched that crap after I finished that course, that degree. I meant to, and then I went and did one job. That was it. I'm not touching that again. It was really stressful. I had to, for some reason, read Brazilian Portuguese in a legal document, which, if you don't know how reading foreign documents go, reading legal ones in particular is very scary. And then kind of my other tisms of it is that my hyper focus is technology. Most popularly, personal everyday technology. So stuff like smartphones, personal computers, that type of stuff. Consoles, I'm getting a little out of it because I just haven't played much console, and since probably the Wii U era. But that's kind of who I am.
Interesting. Especially the fact that you found my content right around when you started tanking. That's pretty cool. Pretty perfect timing. And I did not know you had a degree in video editing. That's also interesting.
I think I've told you this. I don't think you've ever acknowledged the 7 times I've told you this.
If you have told me, I either forgot or didn't see it. I don't have an answer for that.
All the other mods definitely know I do, because I keep complaining to them that I know how to do that, and they're like, well, he'll figure it out. I'm like, alright.
They'll figure it out.
Yeah! There's legitimately a conversation I have. I think it was I think it was specifically Silly. A month ago, where the whole conversation's her and I were kind of talking about how can we help you figure out your load, and I was like, I can just clip shit and edit it. And she's like, but don't you get paid for that? I was like, I don't give 2 shits. I'm unemployed, doing nothing all day. I can clip shit. It's probably the easiest way to just do something, you know? Right. And she's like, nah, we'll figure something else to do. And I was like, okay.
If you've offered that to me previously, maybe I'm just oblivious and didn't realize it. That's my bad, I guess, but...
Probably very much in passing.
That is something we will have to discuss more later, because I have been thinking that I need help with clips lately. But we'll circle back to that.
We can discuss that. We can discuss that off mic.
Yeah, we'll circle back to that.
You said this is all about learning about new people.
Yes, right? I'm not going to edit any of this out. By the way, it's just going to stay in like that, including this part.
I mean, yeah. I'm a freelance video editor. If you need me, you know where to find me.
Yeah, he's in the Discord server. He is one of the mods. So,
the server admin Rocket, or whatever you want to call me. I don't know.
Hint, hint, wink, wink, join the Discord server. There will be a link in the description. Anyway, moving on from things that I didn't know about you. You firstly, you mentioned that you play a lot of Rocket. What drew you towards Rocket?
Whew. So when I first started playing Rivals, it was somewhere in season 1.5 to maybe even 2.5, and I found that I played a lot of Mantis at the time, like a lot of Mantis. Probably in like a season, I was playing like 50 hours of Mantis at a time. And then I don't know if you've ever sat in a low-level lobby and tried to play Mantis, especially once bans are a thing. Your own team ends up banning you out because they want a better healer. Which then kind of was like, I went through the list, and then kind of talked to me, spoke to me, kind of just ended up forcing Cloak and Dagger, Luna, and Invis into my rotation. I actually quite enjoy playing Cloak and Dagger, but I don't know if you know about the community and Cloak and Dagger. It's like being a Squirrel Girl main, that nobody has any respect for you. And at the time, Invis was actually in a similar situation. She was known as a pretty stupid character. And actually, like, we know her as a very broken character. That didn't happen until season 5 or 6, when they gave her a self-shield. And that changed the whole game for her. But, like, in early seasons, in her launch seasons, and, like, the seasons post of her launch, which was, like, season 1.5, 2, and all that, she was actually a really weak healer. So she had very little output. Nobody really, like, knew how to play her, so they just didn't. Right? She actually was probably the weakest support we ever had at launch. Remembering that Ultron came after her. And
Right.
I don't think I've ever seen a stupider healer in any video game than launch Ultron until like season 7 or 8. So, when you start comparing Invis to Ultron, that really does put it in perspective. Right? But I kind of tried to brute force Ultron, and then Luna. Oh my god. I still have, like, flashbacks to how much I want to grab her by the throat pipe, rip it out, and permanently Alt F4 every time I have to click on her name. Because those voice lines are so flipping grating in my ears. And everybody else that picks her. So, like, I would rather just ban her every time, so I don't have to listen to the bullshit that comes out of her mouth. But, that being said, I played Luna for a bit, got her to about 15, 16, and I just legitimately haven't touched her ever since. So when people think, oh yeah, he doesn't know Luna, he hates Luna, he never touched Luna. I do, I don't want to, and never will want to again. Please don't make me ever play Luna. If you do, I'm going to try to find some way to either hang you at a cross for your sins of making me do this, or maybe, I don't know, just circumcise you?
Jesus.
Right, like...
Calm down there, Ultron.
Exactly. Exterminate. But one of the things that I was trying, and then I kind of was trying a little bit of Jeff. Jeff felt awesome, actually. I love playing Jeff. But kind of like Cloak and Dagger. Jeff is, like, only slightly above the utility Cloak and Dagger to anybody. Especially post-nerf Jeff, where you really couldn't backline anymore. Nobody would accept you. But it was better than Mantis at the time. So I tried to brute force that for a bit. But I was like, there's gotta be a character that is kind of like Jeff, but in the way that, like, he has interesting movement. But it's not Jeff, so I don't get grilled the second I hover a character I think is cool. Right? And at the time, actually, Rocket was progressively getting worse and worse and worse. At this point in time, Phoenix just came out, and Penny just got the team up. You think that so you know the Penny Rocket team up that we have right now?
Yes,
it was that, but actually much more intense. Do you know how hard it is to play Penny Rocket Penny and Rocket into a Phoenix?
I imagine it's difficult considering she's Poke.
Also, her ult at the time was like a Moon Knight ult. It is literally just a timed cooldown. And, it blows up every deployable in the field, whether it be Loki clone, Penny Web, Rocket ult, Penny ult at the time.
Namor's fuck-ass squids.
Yeah, anything. And there was no plane to it. So if I had my revive beacon hovering into the outer space, it would still blow up. Right? So Rocket, if Phoenix was an option, was just kind of stupid to play. But I still pushed it anyway. I still thought he was cool. Because I could get to weird spots I couldn't go before. Right? You've played Jeff before. Have you ever tried to like climb up a wall and you find a random little hole? You're like, hell yeah, I can just piss all over everybody.
Yes.
Nobody will ever find me. Yeah, you know the feeling. The thing about Rocket is he's that, but easier to do that. Right?
Right.
Because, like, you can fire 2 shots and it will just linger for 5 seconds. The healing orbs everywhere. Right? So if you need to reposition at all, you can easily do that. Right?
Right.
So it just kind of became easy to do that. And then, like, because of all the cool places I could find, and the Penny team up, and just me figuring out I should probably just ban Phoenix anyway, because she's never been weak, kind of just stuck, right? Also, if you ban Phoenix, you get team comps that revolve around things that can actually just destroy Poke. If that makes sense? Because, like, Penny plays really well into Poke, ironically. Rocket not really, but Penny in particular does. As long as you got to put a nest in a place that is around a corner, Poke really can't do much to that, right? Same thing with a Rocket Beacon. So, like, my duo at the time was like, yeah, I want to learn Penny, and I was like, hell yeah, I'll learn Rocket. And like, we came up with the gnarliest setups, man. We're like, he'd throw out 3 net webs, because at the time, she could only throw 3 webs, right? That would connect my Rocket Revive Beacon legitimately, like, around an entire block, right? And like the default Penny nest would spew across the map, essentially. So, like, if you wanted to play Penny, anything into Penny nest, you were kind of screwed. But that's why I enjoyed playing Rocket. But as time has kind of caught up to me, somewhere about 7.5, 8, I've kind of realized that Rocket, as much fun as I have on him, is also kind of a crutch, if that makes sense. Because one of the downfalls of being a one-trick pony, like I am, you kind of fall into the bad habits of that character pretty easily, unless you are actively working on getting out of them at all times, right? So Rocket's real Achilles heel is that people like to heal bot on him, right? And the big thing about Rocket is if you are heal botting, you're lacking that damage. That's why I don't like the heal bot on him. But yeah, I think that it's kind of how I ended up with Rocket. I don't know. Shall we move along in topic, or do you have any further questions?
No, that's fine. You talked a while about that, and I honestly forgot what my question was to begin with, but that's fine.
You would ask why Rocket.
Yes, I realize that now. But
might have been why I was fanboying over Rocket.
But on that note,
By the way, I'm not even a Marvel fan at all. The only Marvel property I like is Guardians of the Galaxy. But anyway, sorry.
That's fair.
That part.
Guardians is pretty interesting.
Yeah.
But you also said that you had an interest in electronics and stuff. So what got you into that?
Yeah. Growing up, I just liked fucking around with shit, seeing if I could break it and fix it. Like, no, how else would it? So, like, kind of my dream job originally was like I would be an automotive mechanic. Kind of sidetracked somewhere around high school. Something about having a driver's license and having money kind of deterred me from wanting to do auto mechanics. Kind of the both of them was like, whatever. But at the time, I actually found a YouTuber who's still fairly active on the platform, known as Linus Tech Tips. And I'd be very surprised if any of you haven't really heard of him, because if you have had a tech problem, you've probably randomly run across one of his legitimately tens of thousands of pretty high production videos. Right? I kind of started finding this stuff out, and I found it kind of cool. About halfway through high school, of my high school years, I got my first smartphone, or maybe late. Maybe it was actually late middle school. By the way, middle school was until grade 8. Yeah, it was grade 8 that I got my first smartphone. It was a Samsung Galaxy Q. It ran Android 2.2. To put it in perspective, we're at like Android like 20. To like date myself pretty aggressively. Legitimately the stupidest phone I've ever owned, although it was called a smartphone. And then sometime in grade 9, I got an iPhone 4, which was like just going out of production at the time. Although I came from a pretty wealthy family, the family didn't like spending money on phones because, you know, why would you want to do that, right? So, an iPhone 4. I actually really enjoyed it, tinkered around a lot with it. Got me really into jailbreaking at the time. At the time, both Android was called rooting, and then the iPhone had jailbreaking. It was a pretty popular thing that people did because you couldn't do everything on your phone at the time, right? And that was for various reasons. One was that like people like in the interest of Apple was like, if you want the cool new feature, you should just go out and buy a cool new iPhone, right? On the Android side of things, and actually still to this day, Google's pretty bad about it. It was, yeah, you have a little bit more customization than the iPhone, but you're all restricted by your phone's hardware. And the thing about Android is it's designed to be able to be deployed on any piece of hardware. Whether it be a computer, a phone, a tablet, your glasses, your car. Like legitimately, these are all examples that I know I've seen Android on in some capacity. Right? Like even to the fact that like, you know those battery backups that you like to like charge your phone or like to back up your computers, that runs Android. The Nintendo Switch runs Android. I believe that even like the PS4 had a very modified version, but it kind of was based on Android. You know what's a good trend here? But anyway, I'm getting sidetracked. Sometime during my mid high school times, I went one step further and decided, because at the time, Nokia just released a cool new. Actually, I think it was HTC at the time. I don't know. One of those weird phone makers that, if you'll recognize the name, but you'll never know a product they still make. They still both make products, but it was Nokia. They had a Nokia Lumia 920. Or was it a 1020? I don't know, one of the two. Same phone, just with a different camera. But it ran this weird thing called Windows Phone. And I was like, you know what? I'll try it. Right? I was like, I kind of want to try the bleeding edge for once, right? Because like I had an iPhone, I had an Android, I was not too enticed with it. And I was like in heaven on it. At the time, it was like the middest of mid-range phone hardware. Like, and it was priced that way. but Windows Phone was designed to actually run on any piece of hardware, if that makes sense. Where like Android, especially Android, it felt really bloated, slow, and terrible on low-end phones. And the iPhone at the time was, the iPhone, which was not great. So it was a weird breath of fresh air. Windows Phone started really well, but kind of died 4 years later when I graduated. Which kind of made me upset because rip my HTC One M8 with Windows Phone. But I kind of stuck with that for a while. Kind of played with phones for quite a while. Right now, I still to this day swap between Windows Phone and Android. iPhone and Android. Right now, I'm rocking an iPhone 17 Pro Max, but that's only because I played. I had 2 Android phones, both that were not. They were warrantied after each other, and I just didn't want to sit around waiting for another warranty, so I swapped back over. That's kind of where I'm at right now with phones. But I also have a very much a vendetta against Google as a company. So that's something we will talk about. In terms of computers and whatnot, I always wanted to be in the bleeding edge. I've only ever been on a bleeding edge computer once, and that was during my college courses. Actually, I had twice. Both of them were laptops. I had a Gigabyte Aorus gaming laptop to first try to get through the video editing. Found out that NVIDIA sucks ass with their drivers and kind of limits what you can do with video rendering pretty randomly, I would like to say. Like, there's codecs that just don't exist, codecs that require certain hardware, whether it be GPU or hardware of your own on the computer. So I often found that I was having rendering issues with my laptop. Eventually, this GPU overheated. I think it was 3 weeks before 5 days before Christmas. I had a project due on the 24th of December. Do you know how hard it is to find a brand new computer on the 21st of December?
Very difficult, I would assume.
Exactly. Especially a computer that would be able to render what I needed to render, which at the time was 3D animation. Right? You need a lot of RAM for that. You need a good GPU, and you need a good CPU. So I ended up looking all over the place. Also, this is peak GPU shortage and RAM shortage time. Well, maybe not RAM shortage. RAM shortage is much later. But RAM was on low supply because GPUs were problematic. And it was 2021, which it always happens to be... There's a 5-year cycle where people have ups and downs of how often they replace their computer hardware, right? Generally, the running trend is that you get about 5 years on your hardware. If you look back 5 years ago, 2021 is when it happened, and 2026 is actually a year that we've needed new hardware, right? So that kind of trends with what I was saying. But in 2021, legitimately, there were 4 computers. I live on an island. It's a pretty massive island off the coast of Canada. It's called Vancouver Island. It's probably, I would say, 800 to maybe even 1,000 miles long, right? Maybe not that much, but it's a very long island. If you look at it, you'll know. It doesn't really dock nearly well. Most of the province had very limited supply, but I also didn't want to leave the island because it's 2021 during COVID. And why would you want to travel during COVID? So I picked up, at the time, was a MacBook Pro. Because that was all that I could comfortably afford to get the projects done in time. And, what else was it? The MacBook Pro, and, it was just a good investment at the time. while my computer was being warranted because I didn't really want to miss those deadlines. Right? I remember that night getting home, and like, this was like probably a month or two after the M2 Pro something launch. It was just pretty stupid launch at the time. It was basically a better M1, but it was a good computer though. It fulfilled the needs I needed at the time. It had enough RAM, had enough GPU horsepower, and I was able to get through the course with that instead of a gaming laptop, which I never really touched for many years after that. But yeah, that's what I liked about that. But kind of going back into the cycle of things, I just updated my computer back in February because it falls in that 5-year cycle. When I did buy all that hardware, it was during peak RAM shortage. But unlike traditional me, which would have tried to just piece together the hardware as it came out, RAM was $600 as a kit for 32 gigs. The GPU was like $500 a GPU, and even though it's an Intel GPU, that's a pretty expensive price still. But to put that all together, those two parts alone made up more than the cost of the computer because it was assembled, I think, like 7 or 8 months before in a random computer store. And I said, yeah, I'll pick it up, whatever. It booted up, fine, and now I have like a pretty ballin' computer. And I don't have to worry about those NVIDIA woes. And don't get me started on AMD, so... But, all that is said is that during that time, things were getting tough, right? I haven't really utilized that degree much, right? Because whatever. So I just started, about a year ago, actually, I think it was about a year and a half ago, I had a major head injury, and that's how I started playing Rivals, and that's kind of how that happened. Where am I going with this? Yeah. Okay. But as time goes on, I found out that I don't really like Windows. Kind of skip the timeline because I'm all over the place right now. The timeline is I don't like Windows, but more particular, I don't like Windows because it is in a Windows is in a weird state right now. We're July 27th, 2026. For like 3 years, we've been hearing Microsoft saying we're gonna de-bloat Windows, we're gonna take out the AI. Have you ever used Windows recently?
I use a Windows computer, yes, at work and
Windows 11. Windows 11 in particular.
I use Windows 10 at home, Windows 11 at work.
Windows 11, I know, has more ads than when it launched, including the most recent version. They find ways to put in random ads. As of the writing of this, there was a major bug where LG monitors would just, as long as the panel was an LG panel, so it could be like any monitor that uses an LG panel, it goes to Windows Update in Windows 11 and forces ads down your throat. Which this one really ties into my actual rant. I don't like being force-fed ads in multiple ways, if that makes sense.
I don't think anyone likes that.
Right? Like, I pay for Windows. Well, not really right now. I usually pay for Windows. Right now I have the Activate Windows key in the bottom right-hand corner. Don't ask questions beyond that. But I usually pay for Windows. With that being said, why would I pay for something and then be forced ads down my throat, right?
Right.
Now, if that was all it was, whatever, right? But how do they know I wanted a toaster oven? Right? Like,
they're in your brain.
But how do they get to my brain, right? And this is where it starts to unfold. if you actually know anything about how Windows is built, right now it's based on an open source project, open sourced by the company known as Google Incorporated, known as Chromium. Have you ever heard of the Chrome web browser by chance?
Yes, I use Chrome all the time.
That is the Chromium project, at least the Google fork of it. Microsoft Edge, Opera, Discord, Epic Game Store, OBS. Basically, if there's some web element in your operating system, which is Windows, it probably has some connection directly to Chromium, which feeds data into the Google Analytics. And Google Analytics tells every advertiser that you will encounter, oh, this person looked at toaster ovens on Amazon 3 weeks ago. They've kind of looked up. Damn it, this is a stupid analogy. Okay, maybe let's try to find something a little more relevant. This person looked up Doctor Strange leaks, right? 3 weeks ago, right? Maybe we can sway him into Overwatch, right? So they'll slowly start catering my videos that I watch on YouTube, and they already have, being like Overwatch tank videos. Usually I just scroll through because I don't really give two shits, right? But they'll keep feeding me random little nuggets like that. But a couple of them are kind of funny, so I just sit there and watch them, right? But Blizzard knows that now I like these things, so Blizzard can now promote that channel to get people that have played playing Rivals, probably came from Overwatch, to go back to Overwatch from Rivals, or better yet, somebody that's only touched one hero shooter, like myself, to go into Overwatch, right? By showing how this character looks kind of like Strange, and he's kind of funny, just like Strange, right? And that is my issue about basically what it is. It's basically just fraudulent, multi-level marketing schemes. Now, the problem as to why we'll never really be able to get over that type of stuff is, think about it. If governments are not going to change those laws because these companies, one, don't even care and they won't follow them anyway, but secondly, they're the ones that pay their paychecks, right? Lobbyism does force politics. Now, if this was just a Windows problem, whatever. There's Linux, there's Mac OS, right? But there's a whole different thing that we've talked about kind of vaguely every so often. Android. Android is the Google open source phone project. That's what essentially it's supposed to be. Became much bigger than that. Based, ironically, on Linux still. It owns what's known as a super monopoly in the phone industry. Google Play is actually what it is. Google Play Services owns the super monopoly. Although they only own a monopoly in the phone industry, in theory, the stronger half of duopoly, actually. But they own, I think it's like 30 or 40% of the phone market share. For users that access their app stores, Google handily beats Apple every time, right? And with all that information, right? Have you ever gone on to, I don't know, YouTube, and it says, "Welcome back, the Time Wizard." But and then you go into Gmail, it's the same account. You go into Chrome, it's the same account. You open Pokemon Go, and it's like, do you want to use this account? You're noticing a trend here, right?
Right.
That's because it knows what your account is, and all that information bound to that account. So there's more data purchasing happening, right? And selling. And this is why I think that it's kind of like putting all your eggs in one basket is kind of weird. As much as I hated Internet Explorer, I kind of like the idea that there was, at the time, I think 4 or 5 players. Now there's only 2. Apple and Google in the web space, if that realistically is that's all it is. The only somewhat tangible part that Apple has in that space is what's called as WebKit, which is Chromium, but for legitimately just the iPhone and the iPad. Although WebKit exists on macOS, Chromium was forced to be usable in macOS. So most app developers would rather just build for Chrome, just port their apps directly from Windows to Mac, which kind of defeats the purpose and makes Chrome legitimately what's known as an absolute monopoly, because they own, I think it's like 98% of all internet usage, right?
Right.
With that being said, what happens when you own 90% of the internet? Your answer should be you can capitalize it even further, which is why I think that we need to separate Google Analytics, YouTube, and Google, and like all these companies that they kind of own, and kind of separate their budgets, because, and separate their entities, because like reality has it, even though they're open source, we all know how to go through them. Have you ever gone through the Google Terms of Service?
No, I haven't. Has anyone?
Yep, I have.
That's weird.
Yep, I have the TISM.
Yep, that checks out. That's
Yeah.
what this podcast is for.
But it actually wasn't for many years a thing. One of the things that you do check off when you check that Terms of Service box is an arbitration agreement, which means that you can't really sue them if they do something stupid or your info gets out there or whatever. But secondly is it's a rolling arbitration agreement. So they could legitimately say, we want to put the Time Wizard as the person that bombed the White House if it ever happened, and you would have accepted the changes that they randomly threw in there when it happens, or whatever, right? Like, I probably chose a really extreme example, but does that make sense?
Yes.
But you can't sue back because you check the mark that says, yeah, I have a rolling arbitration. Who cares, right? And although Google has been they've tried to push in courts to not let Google do that, they have good lawyers. Do you know what courts do to good lawyers? They let them go free, right? The companies go free.
Right.
Which kind of, right? So that's kind of the extent of why they usually default to going back to Linux and Apple in the end. Because Linux is an open source kernel, but it's owned by some random guy that doesn't like to be public, right? He doesn't have a terms of service to use Linux, apart from the fact that all of your source code, every app and whatever, has to be able to be decompiled, which means that you can just check the code, make sure that there's no stupid thing running in the background, right?
Right.
Whereas, right, like, and Apple is just pretty clear about what they do with your data, right? And they've never had what Google knows is the rolling arbitration clause. And actually, they've stiffened up many times in their developer, especially terms of service, what apps can and cannot access. Right? Like, if you ever gone on your phone and you're like, how does Discord know that random photo I saved 17 years ago of my foot when it had like a giant cut on it? Have you ever noticed that there's just random crap that you're like, I thought I deleted that, but I guess it's still there? But Discord knows it's there because it scraped all of your photos. right?
Right.
And that's why why I don't like having Google. I also don't like the fact that even though they have open source projects, they kind of close sourcing the projects they have that are open source. In the last year, while Apple has actually allowed third-party app stores, Google has been restricting what you can download from third-party app stores. And in some countries, like actually specifically the States and Canada, you can't even install like Amazon like you can. Don't get me wrong, there are ways around it, but like it used to be you just go to Amazon and then you could download their alternative app store. But it's not that easy anymore because Google's terms of service state that you have to be able to access Play services. Which means, but if you don't have one of those services, if you don't have an account, if you don't have an app from Google Play Store, which is like a DRM, if you know what a DRM is, it's basically a digital signature that says this is an authentic product, right? And Play Services is the DRM. It's free for developers to implement. They don't have to, but most places that people that want. Imagine if Rivals, everybody could just throw on a random mod that broke everybody's game every time, or like nobody ever was allowed to be caught for like aimbotting or shit. That would suck, right? That's where DRM is important. But why would Rivals want to implement a paid DRM for a third-party service to use, right? When they could use a free one, like Google Play Service. It's not available on any of the platforms they actually distribute on, but like Play Services is a great DRM service for a company that doesn't want to spend more money, right? And that's kind of coming back to the fact that everything is just Anyway, I think that's kind of where I'm at with my life, is that we kind of are very dependent on one or two backbones of the internet. Do you remember a few months ago when the internet legitimately died?
Yeah, because Amazon Web Services crashed.
Yeah, they legitimately owned 70% of the internet, both front and back ends of the internet, right? Cloudflare is a great example of an Amazon-owned product, right? You couldn't even get onto sites that weren't hosted on Amazon services on Amazon Web Servers because Cloudflare was blocking everything because it couldn't authenticate any website, right?
Right.
Which basically is a weird point in time because the only services we were really able to use was YouTube and Google. But like you couldn't, like if you used Google, you couldn't go to a random website, because the services were down. And then kind of going back to that, that's kind of the scary part about an all digital life in general. Like, the PlayStation Network went down for like 4 days recently, immediately following the physical release debacle. That's probably the best way to describe that. Right, when they said they wouldn't release any physical releases anymore.
Right.
But nobody could play any of their PS5 games. Even a lot of the games that were on a disc were just not playable because they couldn't get the DRM to authenticate because the servers were down. Right?
Right.
To think that it, like... And why Stop Killing Games campaign is such an important part of society, I think, is... Like, imagine if Rivals 3 years from now was like, we don't have a player base enough to support this. It's a really cool base. We have like 85 characters, 45 cool maps, endless skins, and NetEase just says, well, fuck it. And just nukes it. There's no end of life plan, right? Meanwhile, you want to come back, let's say 3 years after that, and you're like, you know what? This is a really cool game. That game where I could play Rocket and climb up a tree and just Fire Kilo. What was it called again? Rivals. That's right. Go in there, and the servers like you get an error 404 on the game, right? That sucks. That would really suck to me. So that's why I think Stop Killing Games is a really good movement, and it's not just on PC or Xbox or PlayStation or Nintendo. And I think it's not just a gaming thing, right? Because, like, recently, what was a good example of what happened? I think it was like when Disney merged with Fox. Actually, was a great example. A lot of the Fox back catalog just simply never made it onto Disney Plus, and any print of it and whatever basically ceases to exist now because Disney is actually fairly protective of their views expressed, if that makes sense. So like, if Disney was to say, "Oh yeah, was a really not a bad example that could not get me canceled here?" Let's say like they said like, "Oh yeah, people that have peanut allergies should die." Seems like a pretty weird, unbased opinion to have, but like Disney would be like, "I don't want that on my service. I don't want people to think that we think that people should die that have peanut allergies, so we're just not going to put on that entire TV show." What if it was like The Simpsons? Simpsons got through, but like imagine if The Simpsons never got onto Disney Plus. That's like 40 seasons of a pretty popular and prominent TV show. Actually, I think South Park was a show that was supposed to be in the acquisition. Never made it. Right? Have you heard of South Park before?
Yes.
Right? I think that's why this type of movement is really important, because it basically makes preservation. Right? Now, I could understand why they wouldn't want specifically South Park, but South Park also, it's a satirical show, right? And every episode is representative of its time. So when I was in film school, actually, one of the big things we talked about often was that film is legitimately a sign of the times, right? Same thing with television, even music, right? Like, but like, have you ever watched Star Trek, for example?
Yes.
Have you watched any of the old ones?
I've tried. The old ones are less interesting than things like Lower Decks.
What would make them less interesting to you?
What?
What makes you less interested in the classic ones over the newer ones?
I just don't like the production value of old shows and movies. It's also why I don't like Star Wars.
Both of those are really good examples, though, of like, this is what was problematic at the time. Actually, Star Wars not really, but Star Trek. It was pretty much at that time Simpsons, right? And like if you look at the lower decks of Star Trek, for example, it is very much, that was the one of the college student, right? It's a lot of Star Treks.
Lower Decks?
Yeah.
That was the one.
There's one.
Well, Lower Decks was the animated one on Paramount Plus.
Oh, fair. I all I knew is that the most recent one I watched was like this one girl that was trying to figure out what sex is pretty much the entire show. But like that is kind of like but at the time that was airing that show, we had shows like Community and shows that were kind of similar to that also were all talking about like how to survive as a millennial, right? Because I don't know like what it is about my particular generation that like 24 to 32, you can't get a job, so you got to keep going to school so you can hopefully get a job, right? You don't have a life because you go to school and have a job. For a lot of people my age, it's like you don't even know how it goes in. Right? Like, you're just like, it is. There's a lot of people that do, but there's also a lot of people that don't. And that's an actual thing that we can document about society. And like, if you look at like, actually America's not that great of an example, but like even Canada or Japan, where like fertility rates go substantially down for what they were 10, 15 years ago. It's not even due to overpopulation. We never really noticed it until the workforce aged out, right?
Right.
But the weird problem about that dilemma is that although the workforce aged out, we don't have anybody to replace their positions. Which is why AI got really popular for a few years, but that's the total ad tangent. Anyway, but like, that's kind of the big thing here, is that we're still looking to get our further education, hopefully get those spots that, in all honesty, are just taken over by computers anyway. And that is also one of the big problems that people have about AI, is that, like, for myself, like, AI has actually diminished the need of my job, my position as a film editor. Because people can just go and just pay, like, $150 a month for a program that goes through your stream, gives you random cut times, so like, this is a good edit, right? Do you want to save it? And then you can do that, right? And then, I get, although it helps in the long term, in the short term, in the short term it helps. In the long term, people lose their jobs, right? And let's be honest, what AI is looking for is not what we all are hoping for, if that makes sense. Because so, you ever heard of the term LLM, which is large language model, right?
Yes.
That works by essentially taking as much information from a body of information as you can. A good example is, have you ever heard of the YouTuber or streamer called DougDoug? Anyway, if you haven't, he wrote a book. And this is gonna sound like the most narcissistic joke that you've ever heard. Legitimately, it is 500 pages of the word Doug. Like, rhythmically, and like sentence structuredly like Doug. Apparently, if you were to read it in what it was supposed to be, it would actually make sense, but it's just Doug. Like, 50,000 times, essentially. And imagine if an LLM was scraping through Amazon bookstore, found DougDoug, the DougDoug store, or whatever it was called. They throw that into the LLM, right? Because they don't, like, LLMs don't actually process if this is a good book or not. They just look at, because it did reach #1 on Amazon Kindle store. It's seen the #1 Kindle store. Now all of a sudden, there is just Doug in a large language model that comprises of like 10 books, right?
Right.
The LLM doesn't know how to differentiate the Dougs from Harry Potter, for example, right? Like, so, and that's where hallucinations start to happen, right? Like, have you ever looked at the mindless slop you find on TikTok and like, who wrote this? And you think, oh, it was just Gen Zs, and sometimes it is. Most of the time it's not. It's people that are trying to take the time to write say like a concept into an LLM, and then get a voiceover for it. Like, you know, the Minecraft jumping around videos?
Right.
Where they read random bullshit. Sometimes it's a Reddit thread, usually it's just a random ass story.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. It's just a random ass story is being fed by a book of like 50,000 dubs. So like, that's why AI is kind of a weird situation to be in. But yeah, by the way, you can cut me off at any time. I'm just kind of rambling now.
Yeah,
Is there anything else you got for me? I realize I've been rambling for like an hour and a half, so...
yes, it is. We're an hour into me recording. So I think that is a fantastic place to end things here. On that note, thank you for joining me for this and being my guest. For anyone listening, if you're interested in being a guest yourself, feel free to join the Discord. There will be a link in the description if you want to participate. If you enjoy my content, feel free to leave a like, follow, share, all the other internet jazz. That's all for now. Be good, stay safe, don't get in any trouble. I love you guys, and I'll see y'all next time.